Now for some details about CPR. This is really pretty simple. Number one, you get the victim on their back on a hard flat surface. You tilt the head back to open the airway. You push where the center line hits the line between the two nipples. And number four, you compress 2 to 2.4 inches, 100 to 120 per minute with full recoil and minimal interruptions. Here's the intranipple line and the center line in yellow. It's the intersection of those two lines where you want to push. You've got to be very careful not to push on that red thing. That's the xiphoid process, and if you snap that off, you can do some serious, perhaps fatal damage. There are two choices about the method for compressions. You can compress with the heel of your hand, or you can compress with the heel of your foot. There are compression depth and stamina issues with manual compression. If you cannot get down on the floor, if you have an affliction of the hands or the wrists or the arms, or can't get 2-inch compression because you don't weigh enough, or are too tired to continue, use the heel of your foot for chest compression. If the lips, gums, or nail beds start to turn bluish, and if you have been trained, switch to 30 and 2. But if you cannot get the chest to rise, go back to continuous compressions. You're doing more damage by interrupting the CPR without being able to get the chest to rise. And here's how you perform heel chest compression. You stand over the victim's forehead, essentially keeping your toes at the top of the ears, with no shoes on, and put the heel of one foot on the CPR point, the place where those two yellow lines intersected. Grab on something to steady yourself, like a chair back or a walker or a table or a door frame, and just go at it, 100 a minute. Now let's compare heel and manual compressions. First of all, let's get something straight that a lot of people don't know. The depth to which you can compress a human chest has nothing to do with strength. It's determined by the rescuer weight and weight distribution, the stiffness of the victim's chest, and the method used, hand or heel. The average adult chest requires 130 pounds of force to be compressed to 2 inches. You need to weigh between 155 and 175 pounds to get 2-inch compression using manual compression. With manual compression, all your weight below the hip joints doesn't help at all. A large chest helps more than a large belly. When using heel compression, more of your body weight goes into the chest compression. Stamina goes up because the leg muscles are in far better shape than your abdominal muscles in the real-world rescuers, that someone about the same age as the victim in most cases. And the title of the Dr. Perez/Bob Trenkamp paper, published in October 15, is Heel Compression Quadruples the Number of People Who Can Perform Chest Compression for 10 Minutes. This was published in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine, and the AJEM is a peer-reviewed journal. Okay, now that you know how to do CPR, let's cover one really important thing you need to do before you start. You have to make sure the victim needs CPR. A cardiac arrest victim, by definition, is non-responsive and not breathing normally. Might be gasping, but not breathing normally. To make sure they're non-responsive, shake the victim by the shoulder, yell at them. You can introduce a great deal of pain into the system by rubbing the breastbone with your knuckle to wake them up. If you can't get any reaction, they're non-responsive. To make sure they're not breathing normally, put your ear over the victim's mouth. Not only listen, but pay attention to whether or not you feel breath on your cheek. If they are gasping or not breathing at all, they are not breathing normally, and you have cardiac arrest victim on your hand. Another thing you need to do is call for help. In most parts of the country, 911 is the emergency response network. Some places, such as Skidway Island, have 355-6688, a private line that goes directly into fire and EMS dispatch. It cuts about 5 or 6 minutes off the response time, but whatever the emergency number is, it should be on the phone in your house, and that's the number you have to call. When they answer, they're going to say, "What is your emergency?" And you would respond, "I'm at 17 Fried Pig Court. I have a non-responsive 71-year-old male. It's not breathing normally. I need an ambulance. I'm beginning CPR." And as soon as you can do so, i.e. when you've begun heel compressions, call the neighbors on your cell phone and ask them to come over to help. Call somebody and put them in charge of it. A lot of cardiac arrest victims have their arrest either in bed or lying in bed or sitting in a recliner. If you can pick the victim up and place him on his or her back on on the floor with their arms to their side, do it. Please do it. But if you cannot do that, and that'll be the case most of the time, consider the following examples of how to get the victim onto the floor. So getting a victim out of bed is a lot simpler than it sounds, perhaps a bit more brutal. What I want you to do is throw the covers over the foot of the bed. As you're walking around to the far side of the bed, you untuck the bottom sheet on the far side and throw it over the victim. Return to the victim's side, remove any table out of the way, and throw the pillow where you guess the head might land. You're going to pull that bottom sheet toward you until the victim rolls over and rolls and lands on the floor. It's a lot easier getting someone out of a recliner. Your first bet is to try pulling on the ankles and just drag them until they're on the floor. If that doesn't work because it's not really smooth, then reach across the victim's waist, grab the far wrist, and pull them over the near arm onto the floor. I know from painful experience that it really works. Now, most victims are not courteous enough to land on their back on the floor. Maybe when you pull them out of the chair, get them out of bed, you may have to do some rearranging. You want the arms next to the body, make sure the legs are in line, kneel at one side of the victim's waist and pull toward you until the victim rolls over onto their back. And then you tilt the head back, and now finally you're ready to start CPR. And what you do with your feet when performing heel CPR is important enough. We're going to repeat it again. Number one, you stand over the victim's forehead facing the victim's feet with your toes at the top of the victim's ears with both shoes off. If you're fairly short, you may want to move your toes a little bit closer to the shoulders. Number two, you steady yourself with a chair, a walker, a table, a door frame, whatever is handy. Three, you place the heel of the compression foot on the body center line where it intersects with the intranipple line, those two yellow dotted lines. And if it ever becomes necessary, just switch heels. And you're going to be in charge of quality control as well as doing the CPR. Keep checking on your rate by humming Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. For the depth, before you ever have a chance to see an arrest, just fold a dollar bill into thirds and then match it up against the width of 2, 3, 4 fingers so you have a good visual aid as to what the right depth is. And I can't emphasize this enough. Make sure you're either getting the heel slightly off the chest or completely off the chest. You don't want any more than 1.5 to 2 pounds. People who take this class typically have a few questions to ask after they get home. All is not lost. Just go on the web to www.slicc.org and click on the class video in the left column. That'll be the same movie you just watched. If you have questions you want to ask by email, it's info@slick.org. Now, you getting trained today didn't make you any safer. It made the people around you safer. So what you want to do is get anybody you spend time with, more than a few minutes a month, to watch the videos. Now let's review what's very, very important. Getting full recoil is very important. Don't let your foot wander. It's very important to not press on the bottom of the breastbone. Getting 2-inch depth is very important. Keeping the Bee Gees rate is important. No more than 10 seconds of interruption every 2 minutes, and no 2 5-second interruptions are not the same as 1 10-second interruption. In a nutshell, call 911 while you're unlocking the door. Tell them where you are, what's wrong, what do you need, and what you're doing. Get the victim on their back on a hard, flat surface. Straighten the arms and legs to roll. Tilt the head back to the sniffing position to open the airway. Compress the chest 2 inches deep, 100 per minute, full recoil, no leaning. We all hope that this was a complete waste of your time today, but it's not likely it was. 1 in 10 of you is going to see at least one friend or family member die of a cardiac arrest right in front of their face in their lifetime. And 1,000 times a day in the United States, it doesn't turn out that way for someone. Thank you very much for being here. Try to get all your friends and neighbors, people you spend time with, trained. You get a whole bunch together and want us to come out and help with the training. More than happy to.